I just got the chance to see the latest Robert Zemeckis feature here, and I have to admit that I didn't really care for it. Now, just in case you didn't already know, this movie is technically shot in one location, where the camera never moves for the entirety of the film's duration. Yes, here is the story of multiple generations of different families who all inhabited the same home over time, all from one single perspective. One stagnant still shot that never changes no matter what time frame any particular scene is set in. And you know what? I didn't really mind this gimmick because watching this movie felt very similar to watching a stage play. No matter how good the actual production is, the location and one's perspective of the stage never changes. So my biggest issue with the film is not the gimmicky camera angle itself, but rather the story that takes place within that angle. There's just not enough story to make for a satisfying full-length narrative. And I assume this is why the film involves several sets of characters in different time frames, so that the multiple storylines would pad out the runtime. But the differing storylines really had nothing to do with each other, save for the fact that they all shared the same location. So, other than the actual setting, there was no real thematic through line to connect all of these stories together. And that made the movie feel more like a series of random and disjointed vignettes. I mean, I get the gimmick here was to show how much one location can change or even stay the same over the course of a millennia, but I would have preferred if the actual plot focused on one singular story, because there's really only one family in particular that I cared for in this movie anyway, and that was obviously the one featuring Paul Bettany, Tom Hanks, and Robin Wright. But they do comprise the main cast of the main family, so it makes sense that I would care for their characters the most. On top of the fact that they are really solid performers, so I probably would have gravitated towards their characters anyway. Thankfully, I still managed to enjoy the performances that they all gave in this film, even though I knew they were each trying very hard to manipulate my emotions. But that's just Robert Zemeckis' style for you. He wants to tug on your heartstrings whether his story earns the right to do so or not. And I like Robert Zemeckis. Granted, I haven't been a fan of any Zemeckis film since 2015's The Walk, but I still like the director overall. Hell, I even like the way that he champions new technologies within the industry, even when said technologies aren't used in the best of films. Which reminds me, while the de-aging technology used in this movie wasn't particularly great, it really didn't bother me either. But just to reiterate, I wasn't really bothered by any of the technical aspects of this film. I was far more disappointed by the story being told, and how said story definitely felt way too stretched out. Sure, I applaud Zemeckis' efforts to tell a humanistic tale about the highs and lows of life, but the movie just isn't as heartwarming or as interesting or as thematically strong as it probably ought to be, which is probably why those ambitious efforts have failed to connect with anyone, myself included. I mean, I often wonder about how life was like before I was born, or how it may end up looking like in the future, but I didn't really need this movie to remind me of that particular thought. So, despite its best efforts to be an emotionally resonating film, here would probably not get a recommendation from me. But I appreciate anyone who took the time to hear my full thoughts on this movie, so as always, thanks for watching.